Hey, what's up? Sitting here watching the end of the Peach Bowl between Oregon and Indiana. It's 56-15. So a couple minutes left in the game. Figure we'll go ahead and go live. So 56-15. If y'all had those, you had a 6 and a 5 on the old Super Bowl squares board, then man, you're a lucky person tonight because 6 and 5. You usually don't have games that end in that in the fourth quarter. But anyways, guys, just it's hard to say like a whole lot about this game without just kind of being hyperbolic and over exaggerating Indiana's complete dominance of Oregon. Never was a game from the very get go, from the very start. Dante Moore thinks he's got a free access throw into the boundary. First play of the game, gets pick six. Right, I thought Pons, the corner number 5, they kind of disguised it. He had outside leverage. He was about 8 yards off, and he just man, they knew it was coming. They knew it was coming, and that's kind of one of my main takeaways of this whole deal is of Indiana's dominance, not just tonight, but looking at their past games, is the scouting and how well prepared their players are for situations, formations, down and distance. Like they knew that very first play. I mean, Pons had to know that formation into with that look, that split by the receiver, there was probably some type of free access speed out like they ran or a hitch or something. I mean, he knew. Like, I mean, obviously he made a great play on the ball and he jumped it, but they did that all night and they really confused Dante Moore. I said in my preview of this game, I thought that there were several ways or for Indiana to win the game. There's such a complete team, several ways they can win this game. But I thought that Oregon, there was a very specific way that this game needed to be, the story of this game needed to be written for them to win. And that was that Dante Moore had a special game, and he did not. They confused him all night long with looks. I thought early on that very first drive, after the pick six, when Oregon goes 15 plays and scores a touchdown and ties it at 7, Moore looked really poised. I mean, he had 4 third down conversions. I know they had one on uh, the running back screen, and then they threw they had the condensed formation to Oregon's left, to the offense's left, where they ran like smash with a shallow route by number 2, hit the shallow for the first down, get it back on the check down one time on a straight drop back, and then the touchdown pass to the tight end um, to Jackson. Basically, they ran like the old stick nod into the boundary where the tight end double moves back to the seam, and that was. I mean, I thought he stood in there and he knew exactly where he was going. But then from that point on, he they really confused him. Now I know turnovers aside, turnovers are probably the big story of this game. With uh, you give the opening play of the game, you have the pick six, and then on Oregon's, I think it was the first drive of the second quarter, um, they botched the RPO, not the handoff because he wasn't trying to hand it off, just the mesh point. And I'll talk about that for a second. So basically, what Oregon had was they were in a closed formation to the right with 2 receivers to the left, so there were 12 personnel, and they were just running. The back was in pistol, and they were running like either ISO or zone to the right, and they had a 2 screen, a perimeter screen tag to the 2 receiver side, and it was obvious that Moore he pre-snapped the screen, he was going there, and the back just he he ran too close to him on his track, and knocked the ball out of his hands. And that's something that happens too. Um, when you're installing RPO stuff, you always try to tell the quarterback, "Hey, if you pre-snap something, make sure you turn around there or you say something to that back in you know the idea of that you are going to throw it. You're pre-snapping, you're going to throw it. Don't run into me, right?" And so they didn't do that there. The back runs into him, and that's basically a defensive touchdown because Indiana gets it on the 3, and they score 3 plays later. And then you had uh, when it's 28-7, you have the strip sack where they run the late the tackle and end stunt. The right guard for Oregon really late getting into his pass set, and they didn't have a chance to trade off where the tackle went outside, and the guard should have been able to take it or to switch it off and give that to the I'm sorry, the guard should have been able to give that to the tackle and the tight end, but he couldn't because he got out of his stance late. And then when the end stunted back inside, the tackle couldn't recover, gets in there, got to get the strip sack of Moore. And Moore didn't have a hot on that play. I thought that was another thing that was pretty key in this game is Oregon didn't help themselves out on obvious passing situations. They didn't give themselves a hot for Moore. And it was obvious from the get go. Indiana was going to bring 5 and 6 man pressures uh, from on third downs. And in Oregon, they didn't do a lot to help Dante Moore get the ball out quick and beat those pressures. And that led to a lot of sacks in that first half, a lot of quarterback pressures, and it led to, you know, turnovers. And you can say what you want about turnovers, and that Oregon obviously hurt themselves badly. But Indiana cashed them in. They made them pay for every single turnover. Um, they got 7 points. I mean, they made them pay full price for every turnover, and that was huge in this game. Um, I thought, we talked about Indiana's receivers in this game. Surratt, uh, Cooper, you have it, Allen. Those guys, they just make plays. They catch everything that's thrown to them. And Mendoza is so accurate down the field. Like when he throws a fade, when he throws back shoulder balls, um, he puts it on them. Like he makes them catch it. He bodies them up with the ball. And then several times tonight where the Oregon DB had Surratt wrapped up, and like he just puts it on a place like right here on his chest. That I mean, he's got to catch it. He's got no choice but to catch it. And like it just the accuracy that and the precision and Mendoza too. We talked about this in a preview. He knows where to go with the ball. Unless you can confuse him with some type of look pre-snap and you can disguise your coverage, you can disguise your pressure, he's gonna have an answer if you just sit in something. And I thought Morgan, they didn't have an answer. I mean, he's 17 and 20 with 5 touchdown passes. They just they had no answer for him. And those receivers made play after play after play, even in pretty good coverage by Oregon's DBs. I thought Oregon, they tried to play some man and press, and those guys beat them. I thought they tried to play, some off stuff, some zone stuff, and Indiana beat them with the quick game and the free access stuff. And I mean, you look at it, Mendoza in the playoffs, so in the Rose Bowl against Alabama, in the Peach Bowl against Oregon, uh, he's got 8 touchdown passes to 5 incompletions, not interceptions, incompletions in 2 games. I mean, that's like somebody playing a high school game. That's like Buford playing a single A school or something. Like a quarterback's numbers. Like it's just unreal. It just doesn't happen. And the announcers like John McDonough, Greg McElroy, they kept comparing, and referencing to 2019 LSU. I don't. To me, from a football standpoint, it's not anywhere near like the same type of offense. But I do think there's something there with the accuracy, the ability of the receivers to get open, and they catch everything. I mean, they catch absolutely everything. And they're all 3 under recruited guys, Surratt, Allen, and Cooper. But the thing that they do well is just separate and get open. Like they don't get like 5 yards of separation. They get separation in the margins where they're gonna give you 1 or 2 yards of separation at the top of the route, and Mendoza's so accurate. He makes those 1 or 2 yards seem like 10 or 12 that there's between the receiver and the DB, and it's really hard to cover those guys for any amount of time. And Mendoza, like I said, he's so accurate. He uses his legs to get out of trouble, and he kind of knows when he's going to be in trouble because once again, he's so precise in everything he's seeing pre-snap and what the defense is doing. And I think that's kind of the story of this game. The run game for Indiana was there anytime they wanted. They're so good at zone. Like they're primarily a heavy zone team. I saw them run. They ran GT counter one time and Mendoza pulled it. They ran power a couple times there late when it was already 42-15 or 49-15, something like that. But I mean, they're such a heavy zone team, and the middle of that offensive line is so good at getting those double teams and working that inside footwork on inside zone and creating creases in those backs. Hemby and Black, they hit everything wide open. They're both one cut backs where they're going to see that cut on zone and hit it from A gap to A gap and just they're going to gash you and make you make tackles in the at the second and third level, and it's hard for teams to do that all night long. And they're not afraid to run it 50 or 60 times with those guys, and then let Mendoza pitch it around the yard to those receivers who are going to get one-on-one coverage because you're packing the box, trying to stop the run. And I that's what we talked about in the preview going into this game was that I thought Indiana was going to have to play an uncharacteristic game to lose this game to Oregon, and it's obvious that they didn't. I mean, that's the thing too. Like Oregon gave them the turnovers, but they don't force any errors on themselves. They execute, and there's nothing there's nothing necessarily innovative or from an X's and O standpoint, especially on offense that they're doing. Like they're getting 11 and 12 personnel. They're running zone, and then they're running some boot. They're running hard play action pass. And they run the same concepts that everybody else in America does. Like they're not. You won't see much of Indiana on the X's and O's pages on Twitter and stuff, right? Like other than just great execution. And I think it's kind of the beauty of what Cignetti's built there is he's gone and found players that produce, that have production in other places, even though they might not have as much upside as your typical 4 or 5 star recruits, and they hammer the fundamentals and just executing. But and I think that's an example of that is their run game, right? Inside zone is pretty much it. And that's all they do, but they're so good at it. You can tell it's all they ever do at practice. The backs know exactly how to see it and how to make cuts off of it. Mendoza knows how to pull the ball when he needs to off of it, or when they RPO, he understands where his eyes need to be and who the reads are. And I think that's just that goes into how well they execute the fundamentals when they play. And I mean, they don't do anything fancy. They kill you with the basics. And I mean, that's what they've done to people all year, man. I mean, they've blown people out. And I mean, it's no different in these playoffs. I mean, you look 38-3 to Alabama. It's going final now 56-22 against Oregon. That's just, I think we have to start talking about them now. 15-0. They're going to play Miami for the national championship, and it will be a heck of a matchup. But they have a chance to be 16-0 in major college football. That's something that's never happened, and the dominance they've shown. I think you've got to put them in the conversation of at least, if not top 5, top 10 all-time greatest college football teams, because they just they do what they do, and it doesn't matter who the other team is. They're a nameless, faceless opponent, and they just whacked them up and down the field, and you know they're up by 35 in the fourth quarter, and Cignetti's yelling about somebody getting a penalty or uh, you know somebody not having the right leverage playing DB or something. Like I mean, that's what they do, and that's their culture. They play to a standard for sure, no matter what the situation of the game, no matter what the circumstances are. So I think those are all things that we kind of expected. And I thought Oregon would have to have a major game from Dante Moore. And if you look at more stats, 24, 39, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, that doesn't sound terrible, but it was just the situational, you know, uh, turnovers, just killer turnovers when he couldn't have them, basically giving them 21 points. And then, I thought, like I said, I thought he looked lost a lot of times on those passing downs where, on third down, they're going to show some pressure. They're going to heat you up. They're not going to let you hold the ball. And I thought he really looked like he was very unsure of where the rush was coming from and where he needed to go with the ball. And his eyes and his feet were definitely not matched up. And I mean, I think rushing numbers are pretty, they're telling in this game. Indiana 39 carries from 186. That's 4.8 yards a carry. That's pretty impressive against this Oregon defense that just hasn't given up anything against the run. We talked about them last week. They gave up 86 yards, I think, to the Texas Tech rushing, and 50 of them were on that one kind of busted play. So to have those type of rushing numbers against Oregon is very impressive. And on the flip side, Oregon had 26 carries for 93 yards, and they just never really had a chance to kind of establish a run because they got so far behind with the turnovers early, and it snowballed on them. They had to kind of abandon it, and really that didn't help Dante Moore either. I didn't think is just the way they had to be so one dimensional in this game. So that's it. I mean, there's not like a ton to say about this one. Just complete domination, and you can say it as much as you want to. You're blue in the face. This turnaround in Indiana is just it's remarkable, and I think I do think that it tests or it shows you know what college football what you can do in this day and age with how talent's accumulated and how rosters are built and how Signetti and his staff have built this roster, identified these players, put it together, built this culture of playing to a standard no matter what, and then they just go out and it doesn't matter who they play. It don't matter if they're playing, uh, you know, it don't matter if they're playing Slippery Rock or Alabama or Oregon. They're going to take care of business, and they're gonna beat you as bad as they can beat you, and they don't really care about what the scoreboard says at the moment. So I'm really interested to see what that game looks like in Miami here in about 9 days. Uh, that's it's going to be, I think, a line of scrimmage. These are probably the two best teams for sure, and they can play. They have some styles that are similar, but I think Indiana's precision and discipline and not beating themselves is definitely an early kind of lean to Indiana, whereas Miami, as we've seen even last night, they tend to, you know, kind of do some self-inflicted stuff that's just in their character, where it's complete opposite of Indiana's character to have self-inflicted wounds. So excited to get to that one. So guys, hopefully over the weekend we can get you out some X's and O's videos and maybe do some shorts and stuff like that before we do kind of some longer form film breakdowns of these games, and then we'll have a little bit of time in the late in the week next week to kind of look at a preview of how these two teams match up. So looking forward to all that. But definitely the dominant run by Indiana continues, and got one more opportunity this season to see if anybody can stop them, and we'll see if Miami is the team to do that. So Y'all have a good one. See y'all later.